no background music, but here we are, the different Zelda games, and I think I've put them in chronological order. I think so. It's like, I don't remember where these four were released exactly. I know that Ages and Seasons were the first Capcom Zelda games. Then you have the two Four Swords games, which came out before Wind Waker. Minish Cap came out after. I don't know where Phantom Hourglass and Spirit Tracks sit in relation to friggin' Twilight, but I'm pretty sure that I've got all of them in the right order besides that. And nobody can see my mouse. Properties. Capture cursor is on. Then why? Oh, it wasn't. I wasn't clicked on the window. So there's Ages, Seasons. That's Four Swords. Four Swords Adventure, Minish, Phantom, and Spirit Tracks. Wait, why are you here? You shouldn't be here. Nyeh. You go over here. Actually, is Triforce Heroes before Breath of the Wild or after? I don't know. And you were over here on that one. Okay, so instead of doing standard S, A, B, C, D, because I don't particularly like this ranking system, I'm going to change them up. Hang on, you go into settings. English. I swear it is my first language. So we have won't play, might play, under 50%. So these three are solely for titles that I haven't played enough of or haven't played. So won't play are basically, I don't ever want to play this game. It is either infamous or unappealing. Might play basically means I don't believe I've played the game before, but I would like to. And under 50%, well, that's pretty self-explanatory. I haven't gotten past halfway in the game before. So we'll start by ranking these ones. So immediately, I have not played through the first two Zelda games. I might have played Zelda 1 before, but I have no recollection of it. Okay, now we have... Oh, I forget what this one's called. Think. It is Zelda. It's not called the Windfish. What is it? Link's Awakening? Yeah, it's Zelda 1, Link to the Past, Link's Awakening. No, that one's Link to the Past. No, that's Zelda 2 Adventure of Link. That's Link's Awakening. That's Link to the Past. So, Awakening, I have not played the original or the first remake. Why does that look wrong? Breath of the Wild. Fair enough. There's a speedrunning chat base. Why have I got the speed running one there? I might have to fix that later. I've played most of them, but back to Awakening, I've not played the original. I know there's a Game Boy Color remake of it, which I haven't played either. The one I have played is the newest remake for the Switch, and I don't remember where I got up to with it. So I'm going to put it in under 50% because I'm not 100% sure. Next, Link to the Past. Again, this is an odd one. I swear I've played the game before, and I can't recall when, but I've done randomizers of it, so I think I can give it a rating. Ages and Seasons, I've touched, I've played a little bit of them, but I haven't finished them before. Now we have the Four Swords games. I have played either one or both of these before. But because of how they work, since you need multiple people to play it, I'm not sure if I'd ever play them, so I'm going to put them in won't play. And same for Fountain Hourglass and Spirit Tracks. I've played a little bit of one of them, but for the most part, I've got no interest in playing either of them immediately. Triforce Heroes, I've only done 50%, so I won't do that. So that deals with our unrated ones, officially, which just leaves the rest of them here, which are mostly like mainline console ones. So we need to add a few more rows. Okay. We might change the colors as well. How many rows do I have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yes, I care about the aesthetic. Okay, so bottom row here is terrible. Then we have bad. Yeah, that didn't work. Why is it, what am I doing? Bad. Pass. Great. And because I'm not partial to the letter grading system because it's arbitrary as to what C means. So I'll go through each one. Terrible. Would never play it again. Would not recommend it. Bad. It has some flaws, but is enjoyable in spite of them. Pass. There is nothing particularly good or bad about it. It is just middle of the road. Good. It may have some flaws, but its good points outweigh them. Great. Has very little flaws, is very much something that you would play over and over again. And excellent. There are little to no flaws. It is as close to perfect, in my opinion, as the game could be. So that gives you an idea of what these ratings mean. And so we'll start out with Ocarina of Time for this. So to start things off, Ocarina of Time is my first Zelda. It's the one I grew up with. And I'm just going to give it good. It's clear that I'm not biased by nostalgia. Oh dear. So why do I give it a good? There are a lot of things holding it back. Combat is very repetitive at times. I am looking at the games and just in their vanilla aspects, so unmodified, no randomizer stuff, just as the game is. Ocarina is kind of repetitive in its combat. It is slow at times, but all around, it's a good game, and definitely, as far as 3D Zelda goes, probably one of the better ones to start with. So, since we followed up with Zelda, we'll follow up with its partner game, Majora's Mask. Now, I put it in bad, but don't get me wrong, I love this game. But I'm putting it bad for a couple of reasons. One, it's got a lot of the same flaws that Ocarina does, being that it was built in the same engine. It is much more repetitive because of the 3-day cycle. And this is probably the main reason why I put it in bad. It's too short. I feel like you could have squeezed in another dungeon or two, but at the same time, there's nowhere to put it, but it's that desire for it that I feel makes it, that holds it back. That being said, as a randomizer, Majora's Mask is super fun, and it is definitely a Zelda worth playing, particularly for its randomizer aspect, because it is much more open than Ocarina tends to be, and that's just due to the way the two communities have done the randomizer. OOT's rando community has much more of a focus on the speedrunning aspect, whereas the Majora's Mask one seems to be more about the chaos and taking advantage of its more non-linear path. And that's part of the 3-day cycle. So the things that I listed as problems in the main game are its advantages in the randomizer. So next, I guess we should talk about A Link to the Past. Now, with respect to the Zelda timeline, not the Zelda timeline, the games and their history, a lot of the stuff that Ocarina does came from Link to the Past. And A Link to the Past is a solid game. It is tough, and I do not like the Ganon fight in this game. So I'm going to give it a good, just because there are a few things that I'm not 100% happy with it. Similar to Ocarina of Time, you've got 3 starting dungeons. It is a bit of a slow starter, but the map opens up considerably quicker, and the second half of the game is very much less linear than what Ocarina is. Because Ocarina, you have to do the dungeons in order up to the last two. You can do Spirit Temple and Shadow Temple out of order. But when it comes to Link to the Past, any of the Dark World temples you can do in any order, despite the fact they're numbered, which is so weird. But I feel like the top-down perspective, it's not for everyone, and that's why I've left it in good, because it is very retro in that respect. So if you're more of a 3D adventure person, that would be a fair bit of a turn-off. Next is Wind Waker. I don't have to put anything for context there. Wind Waker's dungeons are fun. The problem is there are so few of them. Out of all the games that I've officially ranked, so from here up, Wind Waker has the least dungeons, but one of the biggest overworlds so far. And it is so empty. Like, sure, there's an island in each of the squares, but most of them are nothing events that lead to chests. But here's the thing. I can't remember if I actually played through Wind Waker or not. So I feel bad putting it there. So it's a game I need to play. I've watched so many playthroughs of it that I feel like through osmosis, I thought I played the game. But through doing that randomizer that I did a while back, I realized I never actually played it. Which is kind of sad. Artistically, Wind Waker is great. It has a great visual aesthetic. And it has aged really well. As opposed to like Ocarina and Majora, where that 3D, early 3D style is either something you like or something you don't. I just happen to really like it. But beyond like its aesthetic and its dungeons, it feels like Wind Waker is lacking personally. But I feel that in order to give it a fair shot, I need to do a proper playthrough of it. So next is Minish Cap. I feel like giving it a pass. There's nothing really wrong about it other than the light arrows. They have a very specific way that you need to get them, and you can miss them entirely, which I learnt while doing the 100% run that I've still got to finish. I've got a little bit of cleanup in the final boss. But it's like there's nothing wrong with it. It could fit a dungeon in, but it is satisfying. That being said, 100%ing it at times feels more of a chore than fun. So it's not a good game, it's not bad, but it's something that you enjoy playing through once, at least vanilla. Okay, now we're getting into the more divisive stuff. Twilight. So, I'm going to be honest, I enjoyed Twilight when I played it. I have gone back to play it before, so that gives you an idea. Like, both Ocarina and Majora's Mask I've played through a few times each. Twilight I think I've only played through twice. It's not terrible. It's not great. Great is a very hard rating to get, and terrible was like, ugh. But I kind of feel hard-pressed to put it higher than bad. And the reason I say this is, similar to Ocarina, it is very, very linear for a Zelda game. And the world is very much done in chunks. you go from point A to point B and you do all this stuff here until you can move on to the next area. Instead of Zelda's more cookie, what is it? Breadcrumb sort of approach. So in Ocarina, you go from location A to location B, but you only have to go and do like one or two things, and then everything else in the area is optional. In Twilight, you need to do almost everything in an area before you get the flag to move on to the next, or all the optional stuff is restricted. So the game is very confined during the early parts, and then when you get into, I want to say like the final third of the game, it opens up immensely with all this side content, and it feels like it's just padding out the ending part of the game. The art style also hasn't aged the best, which is why the HD version looks superior, because it went for a more realistic art style. That said, like, there's nothing wrong with it, like, gameplay-wise. And it's definitely a Zelda game that I would at least play again on stream. But I don't think I'd ever do a randomizer of it. And that seems to be mostly what I've seen from the community as well. It's probably one of the quieter randomizers. Skyward Sword. Motion controls. Okay, let's be fair to Skyward Sword. It is fun, but it has a lot of problems. So the big one is motion control sword combat is a pain in the neck. You need a specific type of Wiimote in order to play it on the original. So that's a pain in the neck. I don't know about the Switch version, but I haven't heard anything good about the motion controls in that. Next off, it is really lackluster when it comes to bosses. You have Girahim 3 times. I'm pretty sure you fight the Imprisoned 4 times. And other than those two, there is 1, 2, 3 unique bosses. Another boss that's repeated twice, and then the final boss. And that's it. It is really light on combat, to make up for the fact that you have to use the motion controls. And that really hampers some of the fun. The puzzles are creative, but very few, because again, they don't have a lot of dungeons. And more of the creative ones are towards the back half of the game. Also, similar to Wind Waker, Skyward Sword has, again, one of the fewer number of dungeons. So, Majora's Mask has 4 proper dungeons. Wind Waker has, what is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, yeah. Wind Waker also has 4 proper dungeons. Skyward Sword, if I remember correctly, has 7. So you have 3 preliminary, 3 second half, and then that weird bonus final dungeon. Now that last dungeon is kind of an oddity in that it is, I'm going to give away the mechanic of it, but that's fine. It kind of takes the aspect of like a mold your own dungeon by moving the rooms around. And while that is a novel idea, it has to be simplified so much that you can move around all the rooms and complete the dungeon, that the rooms themselves are pretty basic and boring, and the puzzle is at its simplest form that it can be, so it's not too complicated for younger players. So again, it's a novel idea that's just been hamstringed. Oh wait, there is another boss that's repeated at least 3 times. I forgot that. Ah, God. Also, like Twilight, they both have stealth sections. The Twilight's was okay. You did it, I think, 3, 4 times. I don't know how many times you did it in Skyward Sword, but they're fun when they're spaced out and don't stick around too long, but I feel like, because I don't know why, but I feel like Twilight's wasn't as fun. I'm not entirely sure why. It might just be a bias or just bad memory on my part. But yeah, I don't think I ever want to play Skyward Sword again, at least not the original version. But I also don't want to go out of my way and buy the Switch version, so yeah. So next up we have Link Between Worlds, which is rehashing Link to the Past. Whoop, didn't mean to do that. Rehashing Link to the Past's world. It's kind of a sequel and kind of not. I don't know where to put it, actually. It's either pass or bad, because I wouldn't call it terrible, not like Skyward Sword. So here's the thing with it. You've got basically the same sort of thing going on as A Link to the Past, in terms of you have the same dungeon locations. Most of the dungeons have a similar layout. So if you've played Link to the Past, it's pretty similar. The renting system of weapons does mean that it isn't linear, but at the same time, you will end up renting maybe one weapon, and then because you get so many rupees in the game, you will buy all the weapons out. So it's like, again, novel mechanics, but they're not executed the best way because of the ease that they can make the game. I don't know. I don't know if I want to put it in bad, because it's not really flawed. It's just middle of the road. This is the hard part to call with, like, pass and bad. Because, like, there are some of the bad games, particularly Majora's Mask, that I'd say are more fun than some of the games in pass. But I feel like I have to be... what's the word? Critical of them in terms of their design and gameplay. So that's kind of where I've gone with everything. So I like Majora's Mask more than Minish or Link Between Worlds. But there are problems with it, and I have to be real with those problems. So the last one is Breath of the Wild. Breath of the Wild is probably the hardest one to rate because it is the least Zelda-like of all the Zelda games. It has the same, like, the same enemies. It has, like, the lore and everything. Yes, I do. I really do like the word fool, and at least referring to myself as the fool. That also was unintentionally a reference to... I think it's the second Phoenix Wright game. Sidetracking myself. Breath of the Wild. As far as, like, an exploration game, it is good. Like, you will always end up finding yourself going towards things and finding new stuff to do. And the world building is fun. The problems really come down to the divine beasts are pretty basic. and they're the only dungeons that you have, really. Then you have the weapon degradation and breaking, and I feel that really hamstrings the play cycle, particularly since so many of the weapons break so quickly. Part of the reason is you have limited inventory, they break so that you can pick up new weapons, and they hand weapons out all over the place. But I feel like from a player's perspective, you want to have certain weapon types always. So like, you want something that can produce fire. You may want an electrical or ice weapon, but since you can get those with arrows, having a physical weapons of them, not so much. Bomb arrows are basically useless since you have remote bombs for the most part. They're useful in some circumstances. Most of like your swords, spears, and that comes down to personal preference. You'll pretty much always want to have a shield because of how broken parrying is. Which means that two-handed weapons tend to be less favored than one-handed. But it all comes down to like, the ultimate sword in the game basically makes all other weapons redundant once you get a hold of it. Or at least everything other than maybe the staves. But that kind of gives you my idea on like how I feel about that. And so, weirdly enough, I'm going to call Breath of the Wild a bad game. It has a lot of little flaws. It is fun. And it works with all those flaws, but it's not for everyone. And that's kind of where I feel like a game rated as bad is that it's something that's not for everyone, and that some people will go in and not enjoy the experience at all. The weapon breaking is frustrating. The lack of dungeons and puzzles can be frustrating. I mean, don't get me wrong, there are lots of little shrines, and that constant reward cycle can be fun, but it's not for everyone. So that's kind of why I've put it in bad. So you'll notice something interesting. I've put nothing in great, nothing in excellent. These two ratings are really hard to get in my like system because like great, if there's any faults that I can point to and say like this is annoying, I'm very hard pressed to call it great. And excellent is just like you'd want to keep playing it over and over again, you can't put it down sort of thing. But yeah, that's kind of where I sit with the Zelda games. Granted, this isn't all the Zelda games. There are plenty of side titles. There's the CDI games, which, again, I would never play the CDI or crossbow training. Then we have both the Warriors games. I've played them. The original Hyrule Warriors. The original Hyrule Warriors has free versions and DLC where some of it's not backwards. So you've got the original version for the Wii U, the DS version, which had some extra stuff, and then you have the Switch version, which has all the stuff from the previous versions. They're janky as hell, and not everybody would enjoy the Warriors games, so I put them in bad. As for the more recent Warriors games, which is themed on Breath of the Wild, I feel almost inclined to put it in terrible. That game has a lot less characters, at least as far as I played through it, so it's technically an unrateable, but it is just it's rough. I know there is more content for it now, but the Breath of the Wild Hyrule Warriors game, I wouldn't really go out of my way to go get if you were interested in trying a Warriors style game. There are much better ones, particularly ones that are older than the recent stuff. So since we finished Zelda,